Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the Thumbs Up Thursday family. It's a great pleasure to have you all here with Paul Jackson and I. First of all, if you're actually listening to this interview, it means you've actually bought the CD and a shirt. And if that's the case, both Paul and I would like to thank you for purchasing the merchandise, and we hope you will continue to support Paul and the TUT Facebook page. So without further ado, and I know this guy sitting next to me is itching to get going, please welcome Mr. Paul Jackson. Paul, how are you doing?
Hello there. Hello, Alan. Good to see you today, mate.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Well, let's start off by asking how the hell are you, bro?
Well, I'm very good. Bit fed up with this lockdown now, as everybody else will be, I'm sure. But it's given me an incentive to write songs and get down to doing some recording. And we've created the Thumbs Up Thursday thing, haven't we?
Yeah, which is actually leading into the first question I was going to ask you. What made you think of the idea of Thumbs Up Thursday show?
Well, it wasn't initially called Thumbs Up Thursday. It was just going to be me doing a couple of lives. I thought I'd do a couple of lives to get things up and running, and if it worked, I would continue. And then I think someone down the line said, "Oh, it's thumbs up. There's plenty thumbs ups happening on the site there." And I pinched the name. As simple as that.
Well, it's actually been a very good success, as we all know. So basically, Paul, the idea of the interview, which we're conducting tonight, is around your musical career. Obviously, you've been in a few bands. Some of us will know about. Then again, some of us may not know about.
Yeah.
I'd also like to talk about the song selection, or a few of the songs of the selections of the fan CD that we've just released. I know behind each track there's a great story. So, was the idea of releasing the fan CD based on the same idea of the Thumbs Up Thursday show?
It was, and I've been going to release a single or an album for a couple of years, and just obviously with gigging and touring around, with doing different venues and festivals and things, never really had the time. I've got all the songs ready, and I thought, it was your idea initially, wasn't it?
Nope.
It was. It was your idea to get some songs out there to the public, which is a good idea because, as I said, I already wanted to do that. And I think you took some convincing me into releasing the live stuff, because I think releasing live songs is a little bit scary. But I think it's going to be a good album, a good triple album. I'm saying triple at the moment.
It could actually be a 4 CD, depending on how long this interview is.
Yeah. Let's keep it to 3. But so I'm looking forward to hearing the finished thing when we've got it all together. I know there's some great songs on there, and it's going to span my lifetime of music, really, in rock music, pop music and country music. All of them which have took me on incredible journeys around the world.
Exactly. So your first band, or should I say the first band that I knew you were in, was a band called Roadhouse.
That's right.
I remember seeing you at a very famous Sunderland public house. I'll give it the term public house. It was a place called the Casbah in Sunderland in 1991. So how did Roadhouse actually come about?
Roadhouse came about because I've been in lots of club bands on the working men's clubs up and down Britain, and different venues and colleges and theatres and things, and I really wanted to pursue my solo career as a songwriter, and I was looking in the Melody Maker, of all things, which used to be a very famous magazine. I'm not sure if it's still going.
I think it is, actually.
A music magazine.
Yeah.
And excuse me, and there was an advert for Singer Wanted. Now, at the time, I was in a band and we were doing really old-fashioned stuff, like Tamla Motown and Marvin Gaye and stuff like that. And we were a 7-piece band. And I thought it was something along them lines, because it didn't say who it was for.
So it could have been anybody, yeah.
We actually thought it was for Frankie Goes to Hollywood, is what we thought it was. And someone said that they were looking for a singer-songwriter. So with that in mind, that's what we thought it was going to be. So I wrote to the guys, and I got a lovely letter back saying, come down for an audition. I sent a tape off as well with my original stuff. And they invited me down to Barnsley, the Barnsley area, a place called Crow Edge near Penistone, just next to where they do Last of the Summer Wine, Home Firth. Anyhow, got down there, and turned out it was the guy from Def Leppard.
Which, of course, is Pete Willis. Yeah.
Pete Willis from Def Leppard, who at that time, I wasn't even sure who Def Leppard was, to be honest. I'd been that engrossed in what I'd been doing, I'd sort of lost touch with the whole scene. Anyhow, long story short, they wanted me to audition as a singer-songwriter, and they gave me 3 songs to sing, no words, no melodies, just some rough ideas of what they had, and put me in the studio at 10 o'clock that next morning, and then they disappeared for the day, left me with the producer, which was Jonathan Miller. They went away, and then they came back at 7 o'clock on the night and said, oh, we're all going to the pub now, and we're going to listen to what you've done on cassette. And then by the time they'd gotten back, I had done 3 of the songs that I think they were expecting me doing 1. I'd put the words and the music, the melodies and the backing and all the harmonies to 3 of their songs. And then we had a couple of pints, went back to the studio again, which was a house as well, in the middle of nowhere. And came home the next day, and they made me wait 2 weeks before they said, when you coming back down? I said, well, why am I coming back down? I thought I'd auditioned. He said, oh, you've got the job, didn't we tell you? I said, well, it would have been nice
totally slipped their minds.
If somebody had mentioned it 2 weeks ago, while I've sat here biting my fingernails for 2 weeks. But yeah, that was the start of it. And then there was me, Pete Willis, and Richard Deere, and a drummer called Pete Halliday. That was one of the first drummers. And then we got Frank Noon in, which was the original drummer from Def Leppard. Frank's on Get Your Rocks Off. That's Frank playing drums on there.
Yeah, that was the Def Leppard EP, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was one of their first singles. So yeah, and then so for the next 2 years, I lived down in that area, which was hard, like, 'cause I'd never worked away from my wife really before for that long, and I was stuck in a country house, which sounds idyllic, but it wasn't, in the middle of nowhere, because the guys would go home on a tea time, and that was me stuck there till the next day till they came back. So yeah, that was it for 2 years, and we did some great stuff together. We wrote some incredible songs together, and then someone introduced Def Leppard's old record company to us, and the head of the record company, which was Mercury, Phonogram London, he was called Dave Bates, and he was the guy that signed, I think he signed Bon Jovi to England, he signed Martin Knopfler, Tears for Fears, the list is endless. Anyway, they invited us down to London, and said, we like what you're doing, but we know it's took you 2 years to record this, so we need to put you in a studio, and we've given you 6 days to record everything you've done in 2 years, and see what you come up with, to see what you work like under pressure. So within that week, we did the whole thing, the whole album of songs that to use as a demo. Went back to the record company the following week, and were told straight away, we're signing you up for a 6-album deal. And I think it was something like £1.7 million or something. I think that's what the combination of all the albums and the percentage was going to be. So yeah, that was it. Then I phoned my dad from Hammersmith and told my dad we signed up to a record label. My dad cried and I cried. And because I'd strived for years to get to that, and I was 30 at this point.
Wow.
So yeah, and then I came home, and that was the start of the Roadhouse thing. We were called East West at the time,
right?
And because we were called East West, Joe from Def Leppard had been in touch with Pete and said, "Look, you do know that what was the record company called? I forget the name of the record company, but they had a subsidiary of the company called East West, And they said, you're going to need to change that. So we changed it to The Few, which is the band you seen us with. We were called The Few at the time. And it stood for formerly East West.
Right.
That's what it stood for. I mean, they gave us a lot of money to change the name. They didn't just say change it and we changed. But after that, I was watching the film Roadhouse. And I thought, what a great name for a band.
So after Roadhouse, Paul, you had the opportunity to join 70s band Slade. How did that come about?
It came about through a friend of mine, Chas Chandler, the bass player from The Animals, and manager of Hendrix and everybody. He got in touch with me because I was sitting there doing nothing for a couple of years. And he said, I've got you a little audition, and it's a good band, and I'm not telling you who it is, but I think you should go for it. It'll get you back into the game again.
Despite not knowing who it was.
Despite not knowing who it was. And then he said, I'm going to get them to give you a phone call shortly. And within 10 minutes I got a phone call. And I can't do the accent, but he said, this is Dave Hill from Slade here. And I said, yeah, of course it is. He said, no,
like you would.
Chances told me to phone you, and this is Dave Hill from Slade here. And I said, yeah, see you later then. And I put the phone down. And I thought it was our road crew, because our road crew were all from Birmingham and Wolverhampton. Anyhow, long story short, went down with Margaret, my wife, down to Wolverhampton to Rich Bitch Studios, and auditioned, met Dave and the guys, Don and everybody, and auditioned, did some songs with them, and ended up staying with them for about, I don't know, 8 or 10 months after that, rehearsing down in Rich Bitch Studios. My grandma was ill at the time, and she got worse, and I kept having to come back all the time. And then in the end, I thought, look, I just need to stop with my gran. And she died, and
oh dear,
unfortunately, yeah, and it just devastated me. So I had to tell the guys, look, I can't give this 100%. I need to step out of it for a while. And that was it, really. That was how I came out of Slade.
Obviously very close to your grandma.
Yeah, I love my grandma. I mean, we're very close, tight family, you know. So yeah, that was it.
So after Slade, you formed the country and western band with a guy called Jimmy Smith in 2004. How did that come about?
Well, I was, in the meantime, after Slade, I started writing loads and loads of songs, but they seemed to be coming out in a country fashion. And I didn't know anybody played in country music, sort of, in my area. And I met the guy, Frankie Leatherface, from the band Leatherface. That's not his proper name, but that's what he's called. And he put me in touch with a lad called Jimmy Smith, who lived in Pennywell in Sunderland. And Jimmy's from Dublin, Ireland. And he said he could play most instruments. I went to see Jimmy with half a song that I had in mind. Then I wanted some banjo and stuff on. And I was absolutely knocked out. Within 10 minutes, me and Jimmy were getting on like a house on fire. And he could play all the instruments, everything, you know. And that was the other part of the Smith and Jackson band, Jimmy Smith.
He also did an extensive tour of the US as well, with some great acts on the bill.
Yeah, we did. We managed to bump into a guy when we were doing the local clubs in the northeast of England. We formed a band with a singer who's recently passed away called Dixon J. Scott. And just because Dixon was a really good country artist, and we wanted to get onto the country circuit, and Dixon said, yes, I'll help you as much as I can. So we formed a band around him called Custer's Last Band, with all the names. And we got voted one of the best bands in Britain on the radio poll. And then we bumped into a guy called Johnny Ringo, who said, listen, I love them original songs, which was incidentally the first song that me and Jimmy ever wrote, called Winding Road. And he said, you need to be in the States, and paid for us to go to the States. And we stopped at a friend of mine's house in Phoenix, Arizona, called John McCracken. And we used that as a base for 3 months. Came back to England, met a guy from Nashville called John Berry, who was on tour over here. And he said, if you're ever in the States, give me a shout. So when we went back to the States, we found out he was playing in the same town as where we were living, which was Tempe, Arizona. And he introduced us after the show to a lot of radio stations because we couldn't get any gigs anywhere.
Did you feel it strange coming out of a rock band to go straight into a country band, or have you always had country music in your soul?
There'd been a transformation in the last 3 or 4 years of being from Roadhouse to Slade, and then started writing in a country style. I'd always written in that style. If you listen to Hell Can Wait on the Roadhouse album, it's got a sort of a country feel to it, with the big guitars and everything. And I wanted to write more stuff like that, but then I started listening to CMTV, which was pretty new to Britain at the time, and I seen a guy on there called Marty Stewart, and he just blew me away. And then Garth Brooks, and when we were in the States, we got to see a couple of these artists, and I thought, this is definitely, I want to go in this direction. I love this type of music. Yeah, so on returning back to England, we'd been in touch while we were in the States with a guy called Sean Delaney. And now Sean Delaney is called the Fifth Kiss because he managed Kiss. So we released an album on the RGF label called Rivertown, and it did all right. And then Sean took it back to America with him after he'd been talking to Gene Simmons from Kiss with a possible look at a tour, and unfortunately passed away.
Oh.
So that curtailed our activities with the album for a while, and then unfortunately the band split and went our different ways. I'm still in touch with the guys and still love them to death, and I still work with Jimmy Smith in different bands. We've got a band called The Suspects. I still work with him with that. Bill O'Coin, who was Sean's business partner in the States from the Bill O'Coin Globe Music Group, got in touch with me and said, you need to be in America with some of your original songs, and flew me to Nashville. And then I met a guy called Costas. That's who he took me out there to meet. And Costas Riders is one of the biggest country songwriters. And I had a little bit of success on the internet with that. And then I started looking around to see what the options were from there.
You also teamed up with another singing sensation from Scotland called Liz Clark. What's the story behind that, Paul?
Well, after I'd released one of my songs, I got in touch with a girl called Liz Clark, which I had seen on the internet. We got talking on Messenger, and I loved her voice, and seemed a really nice person, you know, and she was doing really well. And I thought she lived in America. I didn't know she was from Scotland. And then I suggested that we write something together, and we did a couple of songs together. The first one we put out as a single, it was Let's Make Love. It was a cover version, and fortunately it went to #1 in the UK countrymusic.com charts, and it was #1 for 14 weeks. So from there we released another single, which was one of my original songs. It also went to #1, and then we did another one called If You Want It, which is another one of my songs, and it went to #1, and that was #1 for another 15 weeks again. So and then we decided we needed to form a band, so that's how the Rock and Rodeo band came back into form.
So back to the fan CD, Paul. CD1 has got 18 original tracks written and performed by you whilst being with Jimmy Smith.
Yeah.
The first track opens up with Maybe That's the Way I Am, one of my favourite songs. What's the story behind that track, Paul?
The story is we did a lot of writing in Jimmy's shed back up in Pennywell there. And that was one of the first things we were writing. That's one of the first things we put together. And it was Jimmy's idea. He came up with that because Jimmy's a great piano player. And he came up with that. It was just a little messing around on the piano. And he had the first line of it. I can hear no angels sing. That was the first thing he came up with. And then it was about a friend of ours who's, and it's not as romantic as the song sounds. He's just so set in his ways. He will never change for anything. He's an old pit man, and he doesn't believe in anything, you know. And we sort of put a different approach to it, a different edge to it. So as unromantic as it sounds, that's basically what it's about. It's about someone who won't change his ways and is just stuck like that for the rest of his life. We're quite contented in his little world and his little bubble that he lives in.
And track 2, we have a song called Open Road. Now this, to me, has a real country feel to it. What's the story of that one?
This is something that, this is pre the Rivertown album, and I'd bought myself a banjo, and I was messing about trying to learn the banjo. And the opening riff on that song is the first riff that I learnt on the banjo. Oh. And we were thinking about different ideas, you know, about being in the States and stuff, and just the open roads that we used to travel around the Phoenix area. That's basically what that's about.
Track 3 is a song called Bubba. Now, to me, this has got a real outdoor country feel. I get the sense that Bubba was like some kind of hillbilly making illegal moonshine. Would I be right in saying that?
He was absolutely nailed that. That's exactly what it was.
Was he actually based on a real person, do you think?
It was. It was based on a guy that Sean Delaney, our ex-manager, used to know, and lived in the Ozark Mountains. When Sean was living out there, Sean went a bit feral for a while after he left Kiss. He was worth a fortune, but he just decided he was going to disappear into the mountains and do nothing for a while. And he lived up there in a caravan. What do they call them? Motorhomes, don't they? And every now and again, in the woods where they were living, there would be a sound of a big bell, and the bell would chime, and it would be Bubba and the Bubba family. And they'd got the latest batch of moonshine. And Bubba was a big guy. He was a 27-stone guy, a man mountain, very, very tall, and a bit of a beast, like a very scary person. And if he said it was time to come drink the moonshine, everybody went and drank the moonshine.
Didn't have a choice.
Basically. And he would get drunk, and then they would all go into town and down to Hooters, the topless bar down in the town. And he would always proceed to end up in a fight in a car park. And so the police wouldn't arrest him on that night. They would always leave it till he'd had a sleep, go to his motorhome in the morning, and then surround it with police. And then arrest him that way on. And that was always the way it went. And so Sean had that idea, and he came to England with the idea. And we put that together into a song. We did some verses, and Sean did some verses. And I'm glad to say, before he passed away, he heard that song, and he loved the song. So that's the story of Bubba.
It's incredible. When the Leaves Turn Brown, that's another song that has a real country feel to it.
That was a deliberate attempt to write a country song, and embody everything that the country tradition holds, like the farm, the children living and growing up on the farm and being educated by a father who was living alone. The mother had passed away. We just tried to embody everything in that one song to make it into a real country song, and it was a deliberate attempt at seeing how we could craft a country song.
Okay. Something totally different here, Until You Fall in Love. Well, what can I say on a personal point? This is one of my ultimate favourite songs that I've ever heard you do. It's not really a country song, it's more of a soft rock ballad. I can imagine the likes of Phil Collins doing this live on stage, sitting behind a piano. So what's the idea to that one?
That came about when me and Jimmy were in the studio. Again, Jimmy is a great keyboard player, and he was just messing about, going round and round this circle of minor chords. And I loved what he was doing with it. And I put a few words to it. And then Jimmy came up with a verse. And within 20 minutes, 30 minutes, we had this bones of a song. So we said, look, we need to record this. And that song that you hear on there was basically one take. So that was one of the very first versions of that song. That's Jimmy playing piano, me standing in the vocal booth, and then we overdubbed some vocals at the end. But that's basically all it is, a one take song.
And the track 6, Feeling Alright?
Feeling Alright Tonight we had been to see a band in the States at a place called, what was it called again? Rustler's Roost. Right up in the mountains there. And the band were called Rascal Flats. And they were a really, really tight harmony band. I mean, they've won every award in the country music field that you can think of. And me and Jimmy just were standing there gobsmacked, and we thought, we've got to write something in that style. We were inspired by what they'd done, and that's how that Feeling Alright Tonight came out. It actually started as a ballad. It wasn't the fast song that's on this album. it was started as a very slow ballad, and then we changed it to that up-tempo beat.
All right. Love's Embrace, the ultimate Hollywood movie boy meets girl song. Is that a fair comment?
It is. I had the original idea for this, and it was reminding us back to the Roadhouse days, and I was using the big power chords, and then Jimmy came in with some really nice guitar stuff, and I thought, we need to turn this into a country song, and that was another deliberate attempt to write a good power ballad, not earmarked as a country song, but just earmarked as a good song and something we enjoy playing, and that's how that came about.
Track 8, What Can I Do? This song takes us back onto the country trail. What's the story about this one?
Another song there, written originally by Sean Delaney. Sean came up with the idea of this. He had part-written this whilst living in his hometown, which was up in Salt Lake City there. He lived just off Trafalgar in Salt Lake City. And that's where we met him, incidentally, when we were on tour up there. And he had this song, and he had sort of had a verse and a chorus, or half a chorus, and he came to England with it. And me and Jim sat round with him for a couple of hours, and we cobbled this one together. And I think that the lyrics are very intelligent, and it's a very deep insight into someone's personal feelings of lying there watching someone asleep and wondering, is that person thinking about me, or knowing that person might not be thinking about that person, and
I see, yeah. Now, Rivertown. If I was a gambling man, and I'm not, I'm pleased to say, I would put money on this song, and I would say this is about your hometown. Would I be correct, Alan?
Nailed it again, my friend. 10 out of 10. So you should have put a gambling bet on that one. Yeah, this is about Sunderland, but I couldn't, Sunderland doesn't fit very nicely into a lyric. So I called it Rivertown because I was born, within spitting distance of the river and the shipyards. And it's about that. That's what it's about. It's about when I was growing up as a young boy, and I remember seeing all the lights in the sky from the town, because I could see the city centre from where I was, and the river, so I was really close. And thinking one day I'm going to have a look round there. And then as a teenager, going down to the beach and seeing everyone drinking down by the beach and stuff and having fun. And that's really what it's about. And it's my idyllic version of Sunderland is what it is.
Well, hello. You've reached Sean Delaney, but I'm not around. So please leave me your name, your telephone number, the time you called, and I'll get back to you just as soon as I can. Yahoo!
Now, the ballad of Sean Delaney, the title speaks for itself. I know this song is very personal to you as well as upsetting, but would you be able to share your thoughts with us on this song?
Yeah, Sean, when he came to England, it's a long story. He came to England, he said, I will fly to England and I'll come and manage you when I get there. I'll come and stop at your house for the weekend. I said, that's not a problem. You can stop at my house anytime you want. So he flew to England, phoned me up on the Friday night, and he said, look, I'm in England. Can you pick me up at the airport? I said, not a problem. I'm like half an hour from Newcastle Airport. He said, I'm in Gatwick. so that's another 5 hours. So anyhow, long story short, I went, picked him up in London, brought him to my house for the weekend, supposedly, where he remained to stay for the next 6 months. And he became, next to me dad, he was the closest, most influential person I've ever met, and he had so much faith in me, it was just unbelievable, and the band, of course. And as I say, we did the album, and he was so excited to take this album back to the States. I could just see him we took him to the airport and put him on the plane, and I just see how excited he was. And then he phoned us when he got to Flagstaff, which where he was living in America, and said that things were going really, really well. He had made lots of lines into different things to get us on different tours and things, and there was a lot of interest in the album. And the next report I got was from someone at the hospital saying that Sean had a stroke. Oh, dear. And then the next thing after that was a week later, Sean tried to cobble together a letter, which I still have, an email, saying that he'd had a stroke and he wasn't very well. But he just trusted him, he will get better. And then 2 days after he died, that's how bad that was. And we were doing a gig in Sunderland that Sean had set up for us. we were the resident band there. And on the night that we got the news that he had passed away, and I was just devastated. I mean, the whole band were totally devastated. He was like our leading light, you know, and he was the way forward. After all the years of struggling, he had so much faith in the band and confidence that we were going to get there. And then he had passed away. And so the week after, he had left a bottle of Jack Daniels, which I'd never even drank, ever. I didn't drink spirits at all. And it was in my little room where I recorded at home, and me and Sean had put together. And I just sat down with this bottle of Jack Daniels and tried to pour out the feelings that I had about this amazing human being that is Sean Delaney. So that's how that came about.
Well, I appreciate it.
And it's a true story that's in there. We met him in Salt Lake City, and the rest is history.
I appreciate you sharing that with us all.
Oh, you're welcome.
Gonna Hurt to Say Goodbye. It's another great ballad, slightly off the road from a country song. What was the idea behind that one?
That was put together on the guitar that I wrote Hell Can Wait with on the Roadhouse album. I've written some good songs on that guitar. Well, that was my first royalty check off the phone. And that was put together about 2 weeks before we knew we were going to the States for a year, because it was going to be a long time, because we were rehearsing for a month. And then there was extensive touring and albums recording and interviews, and we did the TV and radio tour across the States. And I knew we were going to be a long time away. And it was just hurting. My kids were young, and I was leaving my wife and my children to go to the States on an unplanned and no idea what was going to happen. No, not unplanned, but had no idea the way the road was going to take us on this journey. So the first verse was written in England, and the second verse was written with me and my drummer Steve Palicia. Steve's from Pennsylvania, and he lives in Gilbert, Arizona. He's the drummer when we play in the States. And the second verse was written between us in El Paso, when we were down in El Paso. We were on tour.
Now, the next song, I'm so happy to hear the original version of this, because I know it's a very popular choice, requested a lot on Thumbs Up Thursdays. The song, of course, is Freight Train. What was the influence behind Freight Train?
Freight Train was, again, on that very same guitar, my Takamine. I had been in, it was when I was with Roadhouse, and we had a break for about a month. And so I came home to get some sanity back after all the touring. We were on tour for 2 years across Britain and Europe. And so I'd been to a pub in Sunderland, actually a club, a workmen's club, the Downhill Workmen's Club in Sunderland. Yes. Where men are men and so are the women. It's a rough old joint. And as my dad said, you go in for a laugh and come out in stitches. But so I'd been in there for the night. I had a right skinful, managed to walk home, stumble home, picked up the guitar when I got in, and I had a tiny, tiny little tape recorder, and sat down with the tape recorder, and that was it. I knocked that together in about 20 minutes or so. Took it down to London when I went back with the band, and it was ended up as a B-side of one of the singles.
Well, I'm actually going for 3 out of 3 here. I know there has to be a good story about this next song. And the song, of course, is called Just Another Cowboy Song.
Right, that was written with all of the band together in Phoenix, Arizona. We were sitting round, and it sounds like the life of a rock star, but it basically wasn't. We had a place in America, which was John McCratten's house, and that was in Tempe, Arizona. It had a beautiful swimming pool on the back of it. We had a studio built onto the back of there as well when we were living out. And our families would come out and stop with us while we were on tour as well. And so we were sitting out there, and we were thinking, it's a lovely afternoon. We got the guitar out. I had just got a dobro guitar, actually a resonator guitar, that we'd been playing in Vegas the week before. And I'd won $2,000 on a craps table. Don't ask us how, because I'd never played the game in my life. We started off with $25 and ended up with $2,000. just me and John McCracken. So I bought this resonator guitar, and I was just learning to play a slide on it, and I came up with that little riff. And me and my drummer, which is called the Chicken Man, he's Steve Palachi. I'm not even going to tell you why he's called the Chicken Man, it's too rude. But so we wrote that together, and it was recorded in the Recording Conservatory in Phoenix with a friend of ours called Brady Wilkes. And Brady was a student engineer in there, and this was used as one of his assignments. Now, when we were told we had the permission to record there, they said, look, we know you're a touring band and you're going to try and bring alcohol onto the campus. It isn't allowed. So we were devastated, knowing we're going to be in there all night. We couldn't bring alcohol, so we brought bottles and stuff, and the record, you can hear it sounds like we're in a bar. That's loads of empty bottles getting chinked around to sound like we're in a bar. And there was that many students and people in the studio when we were recording it, because it went on all night. It was a sort of an illegal recording, and it was real fun. And that whole setup there was us live, sitting around a mic with all the engineers and the students clapping. If you can hear them all shouting and blowing on whistles at the end, it was just an absolute fun time. And so Brady used that as a project to submit for his degree.
Well, I knew there was a story, but I would never have said anything like that.
Yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. We're still in touch, and he's still good friends of ours.
Another great song on the album has a kind of Eagles, Bellamy Brothers sound thrown in for good measure. The song is called You're the One. What's the story behind that, Paul?
No, the same sort of thing. I was harking back to the Roadhouse days. I wrote a song with Roadhouse, with Frank Noon, the drummer from Roadhouse, called More Than I Want, and it was sort of a throwback to that, using the same sort of structure. It was basically a fun song. That's how that started off, using those very same type of chords.
Would I be right in saying the next track, Leave This Town, would also be another influence on your upbringing?
That's exactly what it was, yeah. It was.
Hey, I'm quite good at this,
You're getting too good, you could do this for a living. So, it was about my life growing up in Millfield, and everyone's saying, look, you'll never make it round here. If you want to make it as a musician, you need to get out of the area. Which was a really strange thing for them to say, saying as the only way you could make a living was playing the workmen's clubs that were in our area. But I'd set my sights on something a lot higher than that. I wanted to be a touring musician, I wanted to be a signed artist, and I wanted to just write songs and tour, which I've been fortunate enough to do all of my life, mostly. And that's basically what the song's about. It's about waking up and making a move, a conscious move to get out of the circumstances in the town that you're in. And it hurts to move away, as it is, the song says, hurts to say goodbye. And that was the start of me pursuing a career in music away from my hometown.
Now we've got a song called Fussing and Fighting. This track to me has line dancing written all over it. Am I correct in saying that?
A deliberate attempt to do so, yeah. Listening to Toby Keith a lot at the time when we done that. And and I don't know, Garth Brooks we were listening to a lot at the time. We wanted to write something with the big power chords in, about motorbikes, because we all love motorbikes. And yeah, the American way of life, which we had tasted at that point and wanted more of, and that's what the song's about. It's about a guy working on his motorbike, not realising that he'd already told the wife he was going out on a Saturday night, which happens. He's still working on the motorbike, she's all dressed up and ready to go out and not happy at all. So that's where that goes.
And the song Winding Road, it's another great original track, to me with a touch of Eagles Hotel California in the distance.
Right, well, I'd never noticed that part in the song before, that sort of reference, but that was the very first song that brought me and Jimmy Smith together. I had a part of that song, Jimmy had a part of that song, we put the two parts together, which were verse and chorus. So that was the first part of that. That's what brought Johnny Ringo to our attention, and us to his. And also what brought Sean Delaney to our attention, because Sean loved that song. And if you listen to the very end of that song, it goes up into another step. That's the part that Sean put in.
Now, track 18, which is the final track, it's actually come at a pretty good time because it's called Cold Wind, and as we're sitting here doing this interview, it's absolutely blizzarding down.
Yep.
I get the feeling this track was also written about your childhood. Could I be?
Yeah,
following
I
that?
mean, I think everybody references back to, you know, what they knew, and I mean, what do you know better than your childhood, you know? And it was about an adolescent young man, which was me, obnoxious little wherever I was. I had been a decent chap most of my life, but it was this thing about squaring up to my dad for the very first time, you know, and the thing I wished I had never done, because I upset my dad that night, and as a young boy mouthing off, and then I thought, I need to get out of the house. So we had a path at the end of the street, so I went out the park. I said, right, that's it, I'm leaving. I got as far as the park, which is probably 30 yards from the house, sat there till it got dark, got scared, and went back home with my tail between my legs, feeling very sorry for myself, and then sort of sneaked up the stairs to the bedrooms. But I'm sure I heard my mummy cry, my mum. I'm sure she was crying at the time. So, yeah, felt very humble, and that stayed with me for a lot of years, the hurt that I had caused through being obnoxious, an obnoxious teenager is where I was. And so that's what the song was about.
Right, Paul, I asked the fans to contribute some questions to you. Would you be okay with answering a few of the best that we've picked out?
If it's legally
well,
okay.
I have done my best to scrutinise
I'll try and
these.
keep it clean.
The first question comes from somebody called Jan.
All right.
How did Paul find the crossover from rock to country music, and what is his preference?
Well, as I answered a little bit earlier on there wasn't really, to me, it wasn't much of a transformation. As a kid, growing up listening to my mum and dad used to listen to Johnny Cash and people like that. Also, I grew up living on the adjoining wall of a bar. So the jukebox was on my bedroom, against the bedroom wall on the other side of in the bar. And they used to play country music in there a lot. So I knew what it was about. I just never had wanted to. As a kid, I wanted to be rebellious. I wanted to do rock music. I wanted to play stuff like Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Free, Bad Company. You know, so that's the way I went, and that's what was acceptable on the clubs at the time. And getting into country music was a bit of a revelation for us, but an easy transition, really. It wasn't a difficult thing to do. So there was no big barrier for me, to be honest.
Now the next question comes from a girl called Nicola. What is Paul's songwriting process? Lyrics first or melody? And do you write your own or collaborate with others? Well, Nicola, I think that's more than one question.
Well, hi, Nicola. A song for me can come from anywhere. It can come from just a rhyme even, or just a few notes that I might just be messing about with on the guitar. So I don't really have a format. If I was to stick to one way of writing a song, the easiest way would be to sit down on an acoustic guitar and just bang some chords out and some melody ideas in your head, and then bring the words in last. That's the easiest way. But that's not necessarily the way I write songs. So I don't have a strict regime in writing songs. It can be with the words first. It could be a melody first. It could be chords first.
It could be either.
Or just a general idea.
Mm-hmm. Next question comes in from Anne. Paul is a fantastic guitarist. How old was he when he started to play?
I was 13, Anne, when I started playing. A friend of mine at school, his brother was in a band, and my favourite band at the time was Free, a band called Free.
Oh, yes.
And he could play songs by Free on his guitar, and I was like, oh, I can't, that's unbelievable. How's he do that? And they were looking for a bass player for his band. I didn't even know what a bass player was. And I asked my dad if I could have a guitar. And he just looked at me with this blank expression. And then he said, yeah, I'll get you a guitar. And I never heard anything for a few months, and I didn't push it for a few months. And then he turned up with this beautiful acoustic guitar that he had made. He made it. He presented me my first guitar, handmade guitar that my dad made. So I was 13 at the time.
Do you still actually have the guitar?
No, I wish I had. I wish I still had it. He put some blood and sweat into that guitar, and it was beautiful. Big old acoustic guitar.
Now the next question comes in from Keith. Where was your favourite place to play in the US?
I mean, we did Country Thunder, and there was like thousands. I mean, 40 plus thousands. I think there was 60,000 over that event at the weekend. But I think one of the best places I played was a place in Scottsdale, Arizona, called the Cajun House. Played that with Junior Brown. Did it with Freddie Fender. Played there with Freddie Fender. Did it with my favourite band, Big House. And yeah, a lot of great bands. We were all the opening band for, and it just had a great atmosphere. So yeah, the Cajun House, Scottsdale, Arizona.
This next question comes in from a guy called Alan Lawson, whoever he is. He says, Paul, I know I've asked you this live on Tut, but just for the record, who is your guitar idol and vocalist, and have you ever met them?
Right, my guitar hero is probably, when I first started off, was definitely Paul Kossoff from Free, with his unique style, his Les Paul and his Marshall amps. Recent years, I like Joe Bonamassa. Loved Gary Moore. Seen Gary Moore. Didn't manage to meet Gary Moore a couple of times, and had some good conversations with him. So recently Joe Bonamassa, but initially Paul Kossoff from Free.
Now, Susan asks a similar question. Who influenced Paul to start playing guitar, and who bought him his first guitar?
Again, Paul Kossoff was my first influence. My dad made my first guitar for me, which was an acoustic. And then one Christmas, the following Christmas, I think I was 14 years old, I woke up at the Christmas morning, and there you go, at the bottom of the bed was an electric guitar and a little amplifier that Mum and Dad had bought me from Woolworths.
A Wolves Top 20.
Oh, it was something like that. It was a Zenta guitar. And I just recently looked on eBay, and they're going for like hundreds of quid. I think she paid £24 for it at the time.
I actually like this next question. It's a question from Anne, and I can't wait to hear the answer to this one. What's the one thing you'd change if you could go back in time?
Definitely some career decisions. Yeah, I started off my early days as a young boy trying to be an athlete. I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to be a runner, and I ran long distance for the school, and I boxed while I was at school, and then after school, then I went to art school. Loved art. One of the decisions I definitely would make would be careful who you trust in the music industry, because I have had my fingers burned quite a number of times through bad choices and trusting in the wrong people. So I haven't really got any regrets in my life other than just musical regrets by trusting the wrong people.
Right. Next question comes in from Val. You play a lot of Roadhouse songs, the videos on the actual Tut show. Would you ever consider playing any Roadhouse live, acoustic or electric?
Right, well, I do the Freight Train, which is a Roadhouse song, and I do that acoustic. I've been thinking about doing Hell Can Wait, so I might record the backing track for that here in the studio, and might just surprise you all by doing a version of Hell Can Wait soon.
That would be great. Adeline asks, good old Adeline, did Paul ever meet the guys from Kiss or Motley Crue?
Never met Motley Crue. And the only person in Kiss, well, the two people in Kiss I met was both of the managers, which was Sean Delaney and Bill O'Coin. But I have some great insights and some great stories into the other side of the Kiss story from Sean's perspective as a manager, which I will impart one day.
Do we have to have a certificate 18 on this?
Yeah. And a letter from your mum and dad.
Alison asks, how did Paul get into the music business? Did he follow in his dad's footsteps, or did he look up to his idol as a young lad?
My dad played piano as a young boy, but never followed it, so I never got to see Dad play piano ever. Obviously we couldn't even afford a piano when we were young, so I didn't actually follow in Dad's footsteps. My idols, as I said, were the bands called Free, Led Zeppelin, people like that. So yeah, I looked up to them and aspired to be like them one day.
And the final question to end this interview session, Alison asks, you have many guitars. Obviously, I can see that from where I'm sitting. Which one was the first you ever bought, and what's your absolute favourite to play?
I've still got the guitar, my first proper guitar, that when my dad realised I was serious at being a musician, he bought me a Gibson SG, which is a 1972 Gibson SG. That's the year that I left school. I was 15 years old. So yeah, I've still got that, and I absolutely adore that guitar.
Well, Paul, that concludes this awesome interview. There's only one thing left for me to say now is thank you very much for your hospitality and allowing me the honour to do this. It's been an absolute pleasure on my half. Would you like to say anything to the fans before we end the show? I'd
just like to thank everybody for making the Thumbs Up Thursday online Facebook Live a massive success for me. And everybody that's bought this album, I hope you really enjoy it. And if there's anything you need to know, please pick up your phones and text me or email me. And I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions. And I hope to see you each week on Thumbs Up Thursday.
Thanks again, Paul.
Thank you.